Hello and welcome to another robotics video for our Zane State MECH 2800 class. We're kind of jumping ahead towards the end of the book and looking at chapter 12 today. Justifying the use of a robot is the topic. And part of the reason we're doing this is because it shares a lot in common with our introductory chapter, chapter 1. So what we're essentially talking about here is why would you want to use a robot? If you had a business, why would you want to purchase a robot in order to do a task that perhaps otherwise could be done by a human employee? And when we talked about robots in our introductory chapter, we listed the 4 Ds of robotics. And those Ds stood for dull, dirty, difficult, and dangerous. Those are the types of jobs that robots are well suited to. Um, Humans can certainly do those things, but oftentimes would prefer not to do dull, repetitive work, to do dirty um, jobs, dangerous jobs, and difficult. Sometimes robots are able to do things more easily. And so those are situations where I think it's reasonable that you could justify the purchase of a robot. Robots have certain strengths and weaknesses. They are extremely precise and consistent, and they don't tire. I mean, some parts may eventually wear, but they don't get fatigued the way humans do. They are immune to emotional situations. Um, so in some ways, they can be superior to a human employee. Now, of course, there is a bit of an ethical question here. Um, if we replace human labor with robots, are we not putting these people out of a job? Is this not harmful to our economic society? And although that argument could be made, the textbook author does bring up some arguments against that. So the one thing he points out is that businesses need to be profitable. If they're not profitable, they do not stay in business, and then nobody has a job. So if it makes financial sense to purchase a robot in order to increase profitability, that will be the choice that the business makes in order to remain viable. Secondly, an argument can be made that although certain positions may be replaced by a robot, the purchase of a robot can also create job opportunities. Uh, Robots do not simply work on their own. They need a support staff. Someone needs to program the robot and maintain the robot and operate the robot. And so there are other jobs created by robots. And third, some tasks, as I alluded to earlier, are just simply better suited. I'm sorry. Although some jobs are better suited to robots, the opposite of that is there are tasks that are better suited to humans. So robots are not going to replace every job. There will always be certain jobs, certain skills, um, certain positions that require human thinking, creativity, um, and so we shouldn't be too alarmist in our thinking that robots are going to replace all humans. That is just not going to happen. And so this slide just reinforces that idea that although they are taking some jobs in industry, they're creating other jobs, and there will always be jobs that require a human. So we need not be concerned that robots will take all of our jobs. So, to justify the financial purchase of a robot, a business must determine what the return on investment is. Robots are many things, but cheap is not one of them. It sometimes costs a considerable amount of investment to not only purchase the robot, but to maybe install the robot, to modify your production facility, to hire employees to operate it, or to train existing employees. So there's certainly a financial investment when purchasing a robot. And so the business has to then calculate how much money the robot is going to either make or save in the future in order to determine if this purchase is worth it. So sometimes this is more easily calculated by others. It's more easy in some situations than others. So you can look at the cost savings of human labor. If you are purchasing a robot that is going to do a job that was previously done by humans, then you are going to be saving the money you would have paid those employees, including their benefits and all of that. Um, the robots work longer hours, they don't tire out, things like that is going to create some savings. You can look at it on a part by part basis. Robots might be more efficient, they might have better production numbers, so that might help increase its return on investment. Some robots are not used for production. So in the example image here, this is an educational robot. It's not manufacturing parts. We can't calculate the revenue it's going to generate on a part by part basis, but we could think of it as, if it's used in an educational setting and it interests students and brings them to the college, gets them to enroll in classes, then in an indirect way, that robot is helping to generate funds for the school. Another way to consider return on investment is payback period. How long is it going to take to recover the funds spent on the investment? Shorter payback periods make it more desirable. Keep in mind that not the robots will not necessarily last forever. They may eventually become obsolete. They may eventually need to be replaced rather than maintained. Maintenance costs might increase. But having said that, there are some examples of industrial robots in service that have been used for decades and have outlived their predicted lifespan. So just keep that in mind that some robots last longer than you might expect. Sometimes when you crunch the numbers, if you're a business owner, you might find that the cost is just too much, that the robot is too expensive. So if that is the case, then you have some options. One is to just say, well, I considered it, but it's just not going to work out. And so you just don't purchase a robot. Continue to do things the way you have done it before. A second option, though, might be maybe you were looking at a top of the line robot or a robot that is bigger, faster, or more sophisticated than what you really need. Maybe there's a cheaper option out there, a cheaper robot that will still do the task but be more cost efficient. And then the third option would be figure out new ways to use the robot. Maybe you were thinking of just using the robot to do one particular task. Maybe it can do more than that. Maybe it can do 2 or 3 different tasks. Again, a reason to justify the use of a robot is because it is so precise, it is so consistent. Many robots can perform motions and actions that are within uh, 0.0003 to 0.005. So that's 5 thousandths to 3/10,000ths. So that's incredibly tight tolerance. They're very precise. And so if you have detailed, repetitious activities, the robots are going to perform those activities faster, more reliably, more consistently, more precisely than a human counterpart. So with the assistance of a robot, you can make some pretty complex parts um, with a relatively low skill level employee. Um, in the next slide here, we'll see a robot used for welding. Um, it requires less skill to maybe set up the robot to do the weld than it would be to do the weld yourself. Welding is certainly a highly skilled occupation, and so the robot can allow employees to do things that they would not be able to do without it. Um, because of the reliability and consistency of a robot, you're less likely to create bad parts. So you save money that way by not having to scrap as many bad parts. If you didn't have a robot and you were maybe occasionally making some bad parts that left your factory, every time that bad part gets into the hands of a customer, they are going to be dissatisfied, and that can have a cumulative effect on your business. And here we go. As I mentioned, this example here, um, setting up a robotic welder can take some time, and it does take a certain skill to program and set up the robot. But once that program has been tweaked and perfected, a few hours of working on the program, as it says here, can turn into weeks of perfect parts, perfectly consistent, repeated welds over and over again. So the robot can allow you to be more consistent and do things that you wouldn't be able to do without the robot. So this consistency and reliability saves on raw materials. In in the case of spray painting, for instance, a robotic spray painter can do it so efficiently that you use less paint. And it also allows the robot, because it's not human, it can work in dangerous situations. So again, here's an example of a spray painting robot. Not only does it save the amount of paint being used because of its efficiency and consistency, it's not bothered by the fumes created by that paint. So there's no need for personal protection equipment, or PPE. And again, a huge advantage that robots have over people. They don't get injured, they don't get sick. They're not affected oftentimes by situations that would be very harmful to humans. So hazardous environments, dangerous jobs are well suited for robots. I am going to stop right here and finish this lecture in the next video.